everyone. Welcome to the program. This is Politics Today, live on Channels Television. I'm Sean Kimaloye here in Abuja. Tonight we just get straight to it. Following the inhumane treatment meted out on the Nigerian Super Eagles in Libya, the House of Representatives is urging the federal government to invite the Libyan ambassador to Nigeria for an explanation. There was an urgent matter that was raised on the floor today by Honorable Kabiru Hamadu, Chairman House Committee on Sport. The House is further asking the NFF to take a formal complaint to CAF and FIFA. Well, that recent ordeal of the Nigerian Super Eagles, some of what has been on the social media that you are not also alien to. You probably have seen it on your Twitter, Instagram, or whichever of the social media. In fact, on television, you probably have seen it. They traveled for a second leg of a qualifying game into the African Cup of Nations in Libya. They came to Nigeria, and Nigeria beat them 1-0. Well, the team faced significant challenges, including inadequate security and logistical concerns, which raised alarm among players and officials alike. In fact, in Nigeria, a lot of Nigerians are very irritated by what happened. But the Nigerians at present, this is how he captured it. He said that this unfortunate incident is a stark reminder of the disregard for human dignity and the lack of respect for international norms. He declared that a reported mistreatment of the players is not only unacceptable, but also a breach of the principles of fair play and sportsmanship that underpins international football competitions. Some have described it as hostage. Some have described it as inhumanity to, well, the fact that this is happening on African soil. Well, the Libyan authorities are also talking. They say that they got a similar treatment from the Nigerian authorities, that in fact, those are just logistical issues. And they are talking to NFF. They in fact are saying they are going to go ahead to play the match. Well, which we'll find out. I'm being joined tonight by Senator Enoh, who is the Minister of Sport Development. He's live with us here in our studio. Thank you so much, Honorable Minister, for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Sharon, for inviting me. Good evening.
What another sad taste, and leaves a very, very, very sad sad taste in the mouth, because you never imagine that this could be done to a fellow African nation. And worst case scenario, we had a very good relationship with Libya over the years. But can we get a summarized global picture of what really went down? Because the Libyan authorities said they are meting out what they also got from Nigerian experience.
Okay, Sharon, thank you. I mean, yes, you've captured it with the right words. I mean, and Nigerians, and I mean, what I can say is that, especially what played out in Libya, almost played out real time, because of the manner and the degree of engagement between, the Ministry of Sports Development and the NFF and the team back in Libya, and how much of this information we're able to give out, because we just wanted to be able to, get Nigerians, in line, in tune with what was going on. Now, but to say that, okay, first I take it with, the allegation by the Libyan team, about the fact that they were meting out to the Nigerian team what they received when they came. I think that for me, this was just either a serious and a dangerous afterthought, because before the incident that took place in Libya took place, there's about no Nigerian who was aware or attention was called to the fact that there was any kind of game that was played or that was meted out against the Libyan team. I mean, so for me, and right up to yesterday, I still wanted to be sure that there was no bit of the information that I didn't get, about that team. All I know, for example, and I've had to make these explanations to different people, that look, yes, our matches are played in Uyo as an airport, and that there's none of these teams that is coming for any of these matches, that the NFF hasn't worked hard enough to engage with the aviation authorities and agencies to get Uyo's airport cleared for their landing. There's none. Nigeria is not that kind of a country that would like I mean, we like to play the game and beat you, in the field of play and not create unnecessary difficulties technical just so to give us an advantage. So for the Libyan team, first they left Libya ahead of schedule. They came earlier than, that had been planned between them and the NFF. And even when they found that they needed to do so, they preferred to relate more with their embassy in Nigeria than with the NFF. The NFF only got to know after they already airborne that they were airborne en route Nigeria. And got to know even further the fact that they had decided to land, in Port Harcourt instead of Uyo, which was their agreed, point of entry. I mean, and when they found so, the NFF did not even sit back to say, okay, you've created problems. The NFF engaged in frantic logistic arrangements to accommodate, what that situation now offered, and went ahead to engage with the aviation authorities to be able to make it possible for their plane to fly from Port Harcourt to Uyo after landing. I mean, they got in, they landed, and the NFF told them what they had made, and they said that the arrangement they had was to drop them in rivers, in Port Harcourt, and that they were ready to go by road to Uyo.
So did we offer them to, did you offer to fly them from Port Harcourt to Uyo?
No. The arrangement was that you've come with a plane. The plane has arrived.
So why didn't they land in Uyo?
On themselves, by themselves, they decided not to land in Uyo.
Why? Now, did we find out why?
One of the things I need to now, say, because it's not becoming obvious, that this team had, perfected, what game, we now got played when our team got to Libya. They tried to create problems at every step of the way when they came to Nigeria. And the NFF was involved in trying to solve those problems. Right? They preferred to land in Port Harcourt when the initial agreement was to land in Uyo. The NFF didn't let them on their own. The NFF was on ground when they landed in Port Harcourt and said, look, Uyo, you can still fly from Port Harcourt to Uyo. So why don't you get the aircraft to fly you to Uyo? And they declined, said they were going to go by road. Right? It was late. The NFF said that this is late. They insisted they were going to go by road through that late evening into the night. The NFF offered vehicles that were going to take them. They declined the use of the vehicles offered by the NFF and preferred to make their own arrangement. The NFF backed up that arrangement with security arrangements and protocols. They got to Uyo. They were lodged at the Le Méridien. Normally, by FIFA regulations or whatever, ahead of the match, they should be, the pitch will be available for them once. In this case, the pitch was available twice. Even after the match, and Nigerians watched the match and saw what and the hanky-panky that went on in the course of the match. Nigeria got lucky that we pulled a goal, close to the end of that match, right? And then even after the match, when they said they were going to stay in the country and leave on Sunday, they made a request for the NFF to assist them access to the plane, pitch so they can do their training. This was granted. Everything they requested for was done by the NFF. So for them to now wake up, it was a serious, dangerous afterthought. And then our team flies into Libya with an arrangement they were going to land in Benghazi. And then at the point they were of descent, they get a counter instruction, you cannot land here. The flight gets diverted without, attention given to whether they had enough fuel to take them to an airport that was about 300 kilometers out of Benghazi. I'm sure Nigerians have also, heard the pilot of that aircraft, right? An Arab pilot recounting what he had to go through. And then not only that, the point at which the authorities had diverted the plane, nobody was available to receive them. And then you leave a team stranded for upwards of about 16, 17 hours without contact, with no water, no food, heavily guarded. They couldn't leave, nobody could leave.
Is it that they stopped us from leaving, or we didn't have the transport to leave?
No, they stopped from leaving. They stopped the Nigerian team from leaving.
So they camped us into the airport.
That is why people have characterized it almost an hostage situation.
Has there been any explanation from the Libyan government? I know that there are those who will say, is it the Tripoli or the Benghazi government? Which one? I don't know which one we are relating with.
Unfortunately, we're only getting to now know. Most people are now getting to now know that about the different governments and which authority can you speak to, right? But, I mean, so far as I know, unless the engagement between the Nigerian Foreign Affairs Ministry and I expect it's going on. Unless those explanations have been offered, there's none of those explanations that I'm aware of.
Let me quickly ask, you look at it that the Nigerian authorities had control over, well, the welcoming of the away team. Now, the question is that they were supposed to land in Uyo. On whose authority did they land in Port Harcourt? Because if you're not allowed by the authorities to land at a certain airport, you cannot land. So if they say they were landing in Port Harcourt, when did we know that they were landing in Port Harcourt? Because FAN will have known ahead that they were landing in Port Harcourt. By that time, NFL would have made an arrangement. So at what point did we know that they were landing in Port Harcourt?
They were already airborne. According to the sources, according to the NFL sources, they were about 20 minutes or so, they're taken off before that information became available. I've told you at the beginning of this program that they prefer to relate with the Libyan, authorities in Abuja, in Nigeria, to sort out all of that. And all of that was put into their flight plan and all of those things. But that's an issue that the aviation authorities, for example, would need to be able to now answer or explain.
Yeah. Minister, I covered sport for a couple of years. So I do know that FIFA has its own arrangement, especially when it comes to international games. And I know CAF also has its own arrangement, and there are checklists of what you need to do as a home team.
That's right.
Especially the FA, to be able to welcome to your grounds the away team. On our the checklist of CAF, what are the standards that must be followed, in welcoming an away team, and whether or not, as a benefit of Inter, whether or not we did our homework?
Well, what I can report to you is that if our homework wasn't done, the Libyan team would have, as quickly as then, made an issue of it. They would have escalated the way the Nigerian team escalated their ordeal while they were in Libya. But what I've reported to you is that at every step of the way, that checklist was satisfactory, right? If you recall, around those days when the Libyan team was in Nigeria, the reactions by the NFF authorities was always that we are familiar with those mind games that you are trying to play. You put yourself in that. We have tried to do this. So, that was.
But Minister, when they were here, the Libyans have alleged that there were problems in their welcoming. The coach and the captain of the team complained before the match in Uyo. In fact, there are pictures that are surfaced of their team members lying on the floor and at some airport. What report did you get from?
Okay, now let me tell you what it is. Again, it has to do with the kind of game that this team played. The Port Harcourt airport where they arrived is one of our, the best airports, right? And therefore, that Port Harcourt airport, there is no situation or circumstance that would lead to a team, right? Having the footballers lying on the floor and all of that. All these things were created deliberately to create some make-believe. And like I also said, if that was an issue, it's not just that we should be seeing it in terms of the pictures that are now flying about. It should have been made an issue there and then. Now, one of the things that I know is that the communications and the exchanges between the Nigerian Secretary General of the NFF and the Libyan Secretary General of their own Libyan Football Federation are available in terms of all the messages, all the phone conversations, all the chats, and all of that.
Did we escalate all of those to CAF before they left Nigeria? At the time when all of this was happening, now we saw that they were playing some antics. Did we escalate it to CAF, or we just kept it?
It wasn't up to us to do any escalation, because if they were those the Libyan team were supposed to have been those who have made the escalation.
Because before they played the game, they were already complaining.
If there was an issue,
if you look at their presser,
yes,
they were complaining that they were not being treated well. They were not welcome.
They were making these complaints to lay a basis for what they were going to do in Libya. Those complaints were at what level?
So, but we didn't see that coming.
It wasn't imagined.
We never thought that we were going to be treated that way.
The only thing which are now here, is that after speaking with, for example, the chairman of ValueJet, he said, because he's familiar with North African teams and all of that, that what he did was to deploy 2 of his pilots that are Arab pilots, right? Because he imagined, something. Normally there would be some kind of approval, according to him. And to show you how deliberate this was, of the entire crew and team that landed in the airport that they were forced to land, the only people that were allowed out of the airport, right, were the crew members. Those crew members had those 2 Arabian pilots and about 2 Nigerian, hostesses and all of that. When they arrived in the hotel, the only people that were allowed accommodation in were the 2 Arab pilots. The 2 Nigerian hostesses were not allowed because, according to them, they were under instruction not to allow them. So all of these things, and Sean, let me also say this, without prejudice to whatever other additional details that anybody else has, there is nothing that you can compare in terms of treatment, in terms of handling that took place between what happened in Libya.
But Minister,
yes, please.
They did not sleep. The Libyan team did not sleep in the hotel that the NFF prepared for them, did they?
Why didn't they sleep?
No, that's I'm asking.
No, why didn't they sleep? I mean, there's no
we
issue.
Were the host country.
There is no issue that has come about the fact that they preferred not to sleep in
the NFF prepared a particular hotel, but they slept in another hotel.
Le Meridian was what was prepared and all that.
So why didn't they sleep at the Meridian?
My attention wasn't called to that because I don't think it was an issue. If it was an issue, if that's what they did, they couldn't complain about it because they didn't do so because NFF didn't provide a good accommodation for them.
Is CAF complicit in all of this, considering the fact that when all of this were happening, our boys were at the airport and the NFF and the crew members for almost a day?
That's correct.
Is the CAF complicit? Because how could they have allowed our team to be subjected to that inhumane treatment for that long without taking action?
In the morning yesterday, when I had a conference call, with the CAF president and CAF secretary general, I tried to call their attention to, issues, that come out of what their concern has been. And I said that, look, at some point, we also had some little issue with the South African team. Again, not created by Nigeria because of their insistence to prefer to land in Port Harcourt, right? This may be a different subject, why would teams prefer to do that than fly straight to you, right? Different subject matter. But I called the attention of CAF yesterday morning to the fact that when that happened, and the NFF was even on ground trying to sort out whatever logistics, CAF Secretary General didn't allow the president one minute of continuous contact and pressure and all of that. And that how come, as at yesterday morning, it was about 12, 13 hours. I say, how come 13 hours after our team is so subjected, there is no indication that CAF is in direct communication with the Libyan Football Federation, right? He didn't say this to me, but my attention was called, earlier on to the fact that the CAF president, who had got wind of this and had come out of wherever he was, may not have known which authority to speak to, right? And it calls to question, therefore, if there are such 2 authorities in Libya, does Libya offer a good environment and condition and situation for international matches of this nature to be hosted in country? That is when we talk about CAFs, being complacent or whatever, right? So I think that all of this raises the entire issues about, because, and I've said this, that this is actually such a test case. Earlier on this afternoon, I mentioned somewhere that it's like African football is on trial. Because how this issue is managed.
From your own point of view, it looked like CAF is either they're incompetent in handling the situation or they were complicit. That's what it looked like to you. Well, your engagement with them.
Well, I won't think, the local Libyan environment may have itself offered its own challenges. Unlike the Nigerian environment in which a team will just make a little complaint and CAF Secretary General or President can easily call NFF President, and all of that, because we are not up to any hanky-panky games, with our guests and all of that. The Libyan situation, first, with people who themselves may have perfected a script to do what they did, and secondly, the challenge of, at some point yesterday morning, when we're still talking about with the Minister of Foreign Affairs, and I was talking with someone else, it was that the Nigerian mission or the Nigerian, foreign personnel that were in Tripoli needed, whether visa, whether whatever, to get to Benghazi. I don't know how true this is, but these are the local, environmental challenges.
It was a bit difficult also for the Nigerian mission in Libya to intervene.
Yes, I remember, for example, that at some point yesterday, the Minister of Foreign Affairs in a conference meeting again, which I was included, was speaking with a Nigerian embassy official back in Libya and was furious about the fact that they must make physical contact and do whatever they can to be at that airport and also be able to deal with the situation.
All right.
That's simply,
I mean, this is important for because a lot of people will be wondering why he's shown talking sports on Politics Today tonight. It's important because the interest of the Nigerian nation, our reputation, is on the line here. Whenever and wherever there's a dent and a mistreatment or maltreatment of any Nigerian, wherever it may be, it's very, very concerning and worrisome. It's really coming from another African country. Either they see themselves as Africa or are Africans or not. That's not our business. But the business here is that Nigeria or Nigerians cannot be trampled upon. We cannot take it. And I think that the Nigerian government needs to take it so that the American citizen, wherever they may be on the soil in the world, the American government take it seriously. And they go every length to ensure that their interest is protected. And so the question that I'd like to ask, Minister, what is the status in terms of the international engagement between Nigeria and Libya? Because I don't think the Nigerian government should take this line now.
You know, first, I think that let's talk about what has happened and what we know exactly. The Nigerian government has demonstrated its similar concern and interest in this situation. The Nigerian government acted swiftly and ensured, and which is why yesterday, about this time, I was at the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport awaiting the arrival of the Nigerian team. And I mean, to the glory of God, they arrived and they were received. So the Nigerian government was in itself excellent in this. Now, the other matters about whatever else is going on now. Elsewhere today, I'd also said that must be going on between the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and other relevant Nigerian authorities with the Libyan authorities and all of that. I mean, I'm aware that the Minister of Foreign Affairs had summoned the Libyan ambassador. So all of that, I mean, the Nigerian government so far hasn't treated this lightly and is not going to treat this lightly because it must get to the bottom of the matter.
Some of this disrespect must stop.
I agree with you.
Nigeria is a big nation. Some other countries will not do to countries on their continent, the biggest country on their continent, the way they deal with Nigeria. Nigeria is a big deal on the world stage. Nigeria is a big deal on the African continent. And some of this disrespect must stop. One of it is also the fact that the way we also portray ourselves and, I mean, make ourselves look on the world stage. Minister, what is the status of the game now?
Okay. Again, Seun, it's some moment ago, because that game is supposed to have been going on now. Maybe it would have been over if everything was fine. I mean, you know, earlier on this afternoon, we got an indication that CAF had delisted that match, you know, and I believe that CAF is going to take a decision about that. I mean, the status of that match is that it's been delisted. And, I mean, you can't now be very exactly sure. You know, the immediate thing you may think is that CAF may now decide to reschedule that match, and then the details of that rescheduling, would that next match take place in Libya or in a neutral ground? All of that will now need to take place. And I need you to also...
on behalf of Nigeria, yes, Libya cannot go unpunished for this.
Well, I mean,
because we need to hold CAF, and we need to hold their feet to the fire, because we cannot be trampled upon.
Sharon, it's not just...
And Minister, have you had contact with some Arabian countries? And no disrespect to any Arabian country here. There are a lot of people who have made complaints, and this kind of treatment, and when it comes to national conversation like this, that when you get this kind of treatment from like countries, it calls to question that how can our people be treated in this manner? If out of the crew members, only the Arabians on board were allowed into the hotel, it tells you something.
Yeah, so these are the details
that segregation.
Yeah, these are the details that the Nigerian foreign mission, you know, Minister of Foreign Affairs will need to deal with, because this have to do with relations between
diplomacy,
you know, between the countries. But you talk about consequences. All our statements so far have pointed to that fact. My position when I engaged with CAF was that there must be adverse consequences visited on the Libyan Football Federation because of this, and that this cannot be achieved by anybody trying to insist that Nigeria should take whatever has happened and still make itself available for the game that was supposed to have taken place today. I haven't said so. I need to also, I mean, you mentioned something about the fact that this is a country. It's not like it's a big country. My approach, the approach of this government, especially on this matter, and for me, in a lot of other matters that I've had to deal with, is actually fueled by that fact. I've always considered the fact that Nigeria is a big country. You can't just do anything to Nigeria and just get away with it. Yesterday, I had calls. I may not mention. When I spoke with Amaju Picnic, our CAB executive member, I said, look, Nigeria is not the kind of country that this should happen, and that this is completely objectionable and not acceptable. And therefore, you mentioned, and my attention has been called to the fact that at previous other times, this has happened, especially at the level of club sides and all of that. If that's what has been the case,
ask Enyimba.
This reaction, this reaction that the ministry, the government has made, and we ensured that our team came back on our own terms, I believe is going to be like a guide for other situations that may arise. The only thing, however, is that those other situations, you may not be able to predict what they can be like, right? There are some situations in which a team, and this is not saying it is correct, deliberately create some blocks here and there.
We now know better.
We now know better about them, but we also have to now be guided at every step of the way by what the status are. Elsewhere today I've said that maybe this has opened up, I don't know what the position of the status of CAF would be, but I think that, I imagine that those status could never have imagined that we can get to a point in which a country's national team can be held hostage for upwards of 16, 17 hours.
Minister, with the benefit of hindsight, is abandoning the game the best decision at the time? Oh, I mean, looking at it now, do you think we should have abandoned the game?
Sheun, let me see how I'm going to answer that question. Sheun, how would it have seemed that a team, our team, any team whatsoever, arrives in a particular country for a game, it gets holed up and locked up in an airport,
criminally held hostage,
and all of that for about 16, 17 hours, no contact is made, and then that team accepts all of those very hard conditions for the sake of football, for the sake of going to go and play a game. You are unsure of what the next move would be. So at that point in time, between the game and the security of the lives, safety of the lives and of that team, of those Nigerians, will be the uppermost thing in the mind.
All right, Minister, maybe we also need to reassess, and I think that you need to also, as a ministry and the NFF, and in fact, any of the games as that, need to reassess our manner in which we host visiting teams, because maybe we also need to learn one or two things in being more hospitable and more welcoming. This is perhaps a lesson for every one of us to how to welcome people to our home. But again, Minister, are you worried also those who have complained about night landing at Uyo Airport?
Night landing?
Yes.
At Uyo. I mean, it's okay.
Have you heard that complaint?
To the best of my knowledge,
yeah.
Unless it's different now, to the best of my knowledge, I think that I haven't heard such a complaint, but the Nigerian NFF will not encourage a team to land in Uyo if it is aware that that plane can't land.
But this is not the first time an away team is landing out of Uyo.
It's not
so does it call your attention that something may be wrong?
It's not about complaining. It's about the fact that when a team is departing its country, right, that the airport it is arriving at is also able to inform the flight arrangements and path that it takes. I mean, if there's an airport that you cannot land in the night, you cannot fly to land in the night in that airport. You cannot. So I don't think...
You don't think that there are some works being done at that airport, Minister?
Sheun, I think that let us not be apologetic in this matter.
No, we are just reassessing the whole thing holistically.
Let's not be.
First and foremost, yes, we're angry with Libya, but again, let us look inward and see where we need to fix things.
First, in every situation such as has happened, there are lessons to learn. There are things to learn, no doubt. But when you talk about hospitability, in the course of this program, I've mentioned to you that Nigeria and the NFF have not had any reason. Any of these hardships or comforts that happens, it happens more because a home team wants to create that in order to be able to have some kind of psychological advantage. The Nigerian NFF and Nigerian people have never worked for this kind of thing. Any of these discomforts has arisen out of what you cannot control, not deliberately created. I need you to know this. Yeah.
Honorable Minister, are we settled on Senator Enoh? Is he going to be confirmed officially as the Super Eagles coach? Or we're still going to take him as acting team manager?
Again, I'm not the one that's going to speak about this on this.
But you are
I'm not the one. Yes, I'm not the one who is going to.
You are in on it, isn't it?
I'm not the one who's going to make that appointment. I mean, the NFF started with appointing Finidi George. That means that the NFF at that point had an orientation towards home, and then it went off after that deal went awry, and tried to see whether they could engage a foreign coach. Again, it went the way it did, and it got forced out of circumstances to engage Austin Egovon. Right, and they've done 2 matches. Today would have been the 3rd match, and all of that. I like us to be, to be open enough, on this matter, and allow the course of things to run, and hopefully, that decision will be taken by the NFF.
Right. But the last time you were here, we were talking about the Olympics.
Yes, please.
It's a long time from then. Any decisive action since then?
On the Olympics?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's a few things we've done. I mean, we've tried to engage, on a post-audit of the Olympics, listen to no holds barred session with the 12, competing sports that we took to the Olympics and the 4 Paralympics and all of that. And I was glad at how open that session was. Thereafter, we have a committee that is sitting on, trying to look at, the various, negative exposures that we had. And each of these things you are doing to be able to avoid it happening the next day. I mean, the next thing now is that we're going to be able to now come up with, some kind of a plan, a program that tries to...
There are some people who had and messed up our nation. And that's how they go unpunished.
I just talked to you about a 7-member committee that is sitting and interrogating that and engaging that. They're going to come out with their report.
So we just want to be sure that the process will be thorough.
Yes,
and anybody who erred should not go unpunished.
What we should be sure,
it will be a detriment to
and Nigerians should be delighted about is the fact that we haven't swept any of this under the carpet, and they're looking at it, them holistically. There's none of those issues that gave us a negative exposure that we have tried to bury. They're all part of the terms of reference of the committee, and the committee has eminent, people who have names. Yeah. Okay, I haven't called any of them. They invited me in their first sitting and took me on as well, and I was glad at the way they took me on. And I expect that's how they're going to approach every other person they're going to take and all that. And yeah, so that's what it is. So they're an independent committee. They're working on it. And for that reason, we made sure nobody from the ministry is part of that.
Honorable Minister for Sport Development, Senator Enoh, thank you so much indeed for your time tonight and explaining to Nigerians. Because, maybe you don't know, this your ministry is probably the most important ministry in Nigeria. You know why?
Why, Phil?
This is the only matter that unites Nigeria the most.
Yes,
This is the only system where there is no Yoruba, Hausa, Igbo, or Efik, or Yoruba. Everyone is Nigerian, and we speak one language.
So can I say something?
That's how important.
Can I say something?
Go ahead.
What it means that sports matter.
It matters, and it's a united
and I need that both government and the people of this country, do all they can to make sure that we approach sports in terms of whatever needs to be put in place for sports.
And they want you to make a change. Are you going to do that?
I'm hopefully, going to make that change.
Because it's a promise you're making.
It's I know how else. For me, it's total commitment. For me, the work has to be done.
All right.
And that work that has to be done is that work that has to be done that's going to be positive and positively impact.
Right.
Yeah.
Honorable Minister, thank you so much indeed for coming to I appreciate it.
Thank you, Sheon.
And I wish you the very best.
Thank you.
If this is a factor that brings us together, that unites us as a people, let's keep it and let's be passionate about it. If we can move forward in sport, we can move forward in every area. Or we go on a break, everyone. When we return, we shall be asking critical questions on the Tinubu government's student loan scheme. There are complaints But we shall be engaging the man who is in charge of the student loan fund after this break, everyone. Tell me. One of the major campaign ideas of the Tinubu government when they were coming into power is a student loan. That concept was launched months ago, and the office the administration was set up, and it says it has begun disbursing the funds. For how far? With many complaining about some issues, especially in the southeast, and say, oh, it hasn't really been working in that region of the country. We're diving into a topic that affects countless students across Nigeria, the newly launched student loan scheme. Well, joining me to discuss this is the managing director of the student loan scheme, Mr. Akintunde Sawyer. Thank you so much indeed for coming tonight.
Thank you very much indeed for having me. It's always a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, thank you. The last time you were taken off. Now you are in the skies in terms of disbursement, in terms of operation.
Yes.
Give us an understanding. How many students have you enrolled so far? How much have you disbursed?
Okay, so far, let me break it into three portions. So far, we've registered about 370,000 students have actually visited and registered and entered their details onto our portal.
370,000.
The number of students who have actually applied for the loan is about 280,000. So just to give you a sort of indication of what that all means, we have a number of students who have not decided as to whether or not they want to proceed and apply, which is fair enough. It's a loan. People need to think about it. About 89,000 of those exist. But 270,000...
89,000 you have engaged actively.
So, no. So there are three figures here. So there's 370,000 who have registered.
Logged onto the portal.
Logged onto the
approached the portal.
Approached the portal, put their details in the portal, their personal details, and have stopped short of just applying. 280,000 have actually applied. The difference between those two numbers is somewhere in the region of 298 to 89,000. I beg your pardon.
Yeah.
My numbers are a bit mixed up.
Yeah.
So that 89,000 represents those who are still considering whether or not to apply.
Undecided.
Undecided. You know, maybe they're waiting for, you know, permission from somebody, you know, because parental involvement may be important in this process. They're considering, they want more information, perhaps. But it's very healthy because, you know, it is a loan, and it's important that people think about it carefully. We don't, you know, force people to do this. It's a big consideration, and we are careful.
So in all of the 280,000 that have successfully applied, how many of them have you successfully engaged?
So when you say, have we successfully engaged, the people who have applied through an electronic portal. We don't tend to engage them directly. Essentially, what has happened is that they've applied. We're looking at their data. About 40,000 of them have been approved, and we've actually disbursed to them.
40,000?
Yes, about 40,000. Yes.
That amounts to how much in Naira figures?
I think that's probably in the region of, you know, 9-10 billion Naira.
About 10 billion has been disbursed?
Yes, disbursed.
And it's gone into these federal universities?
No, so they're not just universities. So people can apply from universities, they can apply from polytechnics and from colleges of education. So it's not just universities.
Okay. So it has to be tertiary institution owned by the federal government?
Yes, tertiary institutions owned by the federal government. And as I said, universities, polytechnics, colleges of education. And the way we disburse the loans is that we pay the fees. And so far, we have a commitment of paying fees of about 30 billion and about 60 billion in upkeep loans. So the second tranche of this is that we pay directly to the students an upkeep, a pocket money, if you like. Our commitment to that...
Every semester or every session? How do you pay it?
So the institutional fees are paid per session. So every session we pay the institutional fees. For the upkeep, we pay monthly. So the student will receive a monthly stipend, of 20,000.
So do you keep records of the students? What are you doing? Because definitely some students might be truants Some, with a lot of factors can happen. Incomplete registration by no fault of the school, but maybe the student missed something out. How are you able to keep track?
So, first of all, let me just talk to truancy. We don't monitor attendance.
Or performance?
No, we don't attendance or performance.
So the disbursement is also not performance-based?
No, it's not
for merit?
So it's important to recognize that what we do is we give loans based on people being admitted into the institution.
And that's the basic? And
that's the essential basis of us giving the loans. And of course, that they're not able to pay themselves, they can't afford to pay themselves. But remember, this is not a scholarship. So really, we don't necessarily look at what the grades are. What we do, and where that does come up, is that when they come to apply for the next session, they have to have been readmitted by the institution for them to be able to apply for the loan for the next session. But during the session itself, we don't actually monitor their performance. It is a loan, and I imagine that most people recognize that they will have to pay it back, so they actually do their best to ensure that they're doing the best that they can do. But this isn't sort of testing and trying to give loans to people who are the most clever in our society.
So your agenda or the purpose for which the NEL fund is set up is not to give grant to performing student or a highly cerebral student or high-flying student, but basic is to direct your energy to indigent students. Is that right?
Effectively, that is correct. So what we're looking for, and we're actively looking to engage these people, are people who have gained admission into a tertiary institution, don't necessarily have the funds either to commence or to complete their studies in that institution, whether it's over 1 session or 4 sessions or 3 sessions, however long it might be. So our objective is to seek out and find these students and put this opportunity before them, so that they know that the option of dropping out, which often isn't an option in itself, is not one that we want them to ever have to put up with. We pay fees for those who are interested, who have qualified to enter or access these institutions, to be able to study.
So the reason why I asked the question is this. So there are lots of people who cannot, and genuinely, they cannot afford a tertiary education.
Sure.
Because of their social status.
Yes.
But there are those who are also interested, but not because they cannot afford it, but just want to try it out.
Sure.
So the question is that there are those who will need it the most, and there are those, unfortunately, there are some who will apply and need it less that will get it, compared to those who need it most and may not get it. So the question is that how do you, if the effort of this government is to target indigent students and allow those who cannot afford education to go to school.
Yes.
And the reason why some of us are paying more attention to education is that my parents couldn't afford to go to school as much as they wanted to. My mother, very brilliant woman as that, but couldn't afford to go beyond class 7. Same with my father. And perhaps the reason why they put a lot of effort, sold properties, and made sure that some of us went to school. The question is, how are you making effort in pushing those who cannot afford it? How are you able to identify indigent students?
Okay, so look, fortunately, Sheon, what has happened here is that the president, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR, has ensured that this program is well funded. So we're not short of funds. We're not, in a situation.
So you can give anybody you like?
We can, effectively. But clearly what we want to make sure of is that we're giving those who need it the most. But at the stage we're at...
How do you identify them? That's a question.
Well, if you find students in a tertiary institution that's government-owned, you've automatically really found a catchment of people who can't necessarily afford to go private or can't necessarily afford to go abroad. So there's already a catchment in that space of people who are probably going to be needy. Look, I've visited 5 geopolitical zones, sensitizing students. We've touched about 25,000 students in the last 8 or so weeks. And I've met all sorts of students. I've met students at institutions who are struggling to feed. I've met students at these institutions who seem to be okay in terms of paying their fees. But we've also discovered that for some of these students who seem to be okay, their parents are really struggling to keep them in the institution. Look, sensitization for us is about going out, meeting institutions, meeting students. I've been to institutions in this country where the authorities in the institution have actually set up funds to support students who, are about to drop out or who could drop out and are getting private donations. We're intervening very directly. The level of indigence is really high in public institutions. People start and can't finish, they lose parents along the way, things happen to them. So, when we start talking about, seeking out indigent students, a student may not be completely indigent in their first session, but something happens to them, and in the second session, they are. So, the president is wanting us to catch as many as possible in tertiary federal and state government-owned institutions, so that we can actually catch those who may need it before they need it.
Mr. Sawyer,
yes.
You basically, are you doing off the online application? Are you doing manual applications?
No, we're not.
So this is a problem. Yeah, you don't think that that's an exclusion, a ground for exclusion?
Oh, absolutely. Look, whatever method you use, you're going to exclude somebody. The important thing for us to do is to be able to identify those we might be excluding and then mitigate for that.
So, and I want to make a suggestion to you. There are those, we underestimate or we overestimate the impact and the penetration of internet and the digital platforms.
Sure.
And so we neglect that we're still in some way very manual. Even in the US that we're talking about, US is largely manual. US uses postal agency more than any part of America or Europe that I know. And so, and I want to suggest to you, is it possible that you make forms available to student unions, to student associations in a different institution, such that they can manually fill, and maybe at the beginning of every session, create a little office where in every state where people can physically walk in and submit their application? Is it possible?
Sure.
Because the online, a lot of people will say it's practically an exclusion ground.
Sure. Sure, look, you're absolutely right. Internet penetration, not just in Nigeria, is hardly ever 100%. And anyone who doesn't have access to the internet, you're absolutely correct, is effectively, potentially excluded from being able to apply. However, we've considered that, and we're going into partnerships with specific private sector organizations. We haven't engaged directly in terms of contracting or signing agreements, but we're looking to work with institutions like banks, for example, who may be able to provide the opportunity for people who want to apply for these loans to come into the bank, which is a safe environment. Use a computer in the bank that's connected to the internet, get some support from bank staff or NELFund staff so that they can access this facility. The danger with going manual is that we're opening ourselves up to opportunities for fraud, for corruption, for misinformation.
Totally.
So, but we recognize that, you can't always have your cake and eat it. What we're trying to do is look at how we can do this in the best possible way, reduce exclusion.
Because I don't have as much time. The question of disbursement, there are delays in disbursement of funds. What happened? Has that been settled?
So, I'm not sure that there are what you would call delays. We have a process that we must follow. And the process is very simply this. When a student or students apply for this loan, we receive the applications. When we receive the applications, we process the applications. We give loans to those who qualify. Then we send that list to the institution to say, are these really your students? The institution must respond by saying to us, yes, these are our students. Sometimes there are delays in that process, but we must adhere to that process.
Not because you're stifled with funds, or maybe you don't have money. It's just the processing, the bureaucracy that is delaying the funds.
We are absolutely not short of funds. The president has made sure that this is a very well-funded agency. It's not the funding. What it is just the process of ensuring.
So quickly
that
also, 20,000 is what you're paying as stipend, isn't it?
It is indeed.
Yeah. Are you open to increase? Because there are those who are complaining that photocopies and all what, transportation, feeding and all what have you, that may not cover. Are you open to increase, or that is what it is
we're
right now?
certainly hoping to increase in due course. See, the reality of it is that we are in a hyperinflationary environment, and it's difficult to sort of fix a fee because cost of living is rising, quite quickly. So, at some point in the future, we're going to reevaluate what we're giving. But I want to point something out to you. This time last year, people had to find money for their fees. They had to find money for their upkeep. We're taking the issue of the fees off the table. So the institutional charges would take the issue off the table. So we've already eliminated that, and then we're going to pay the stipend on top of that.
Well, when we see something that will benefit the average person, we will clap and praise it. When indigent, if my parent had an opportunity like this to go to school more than what he did, maybe things would have been better. But I think that we will borrow you some little wisdom. Can you reach out to traditional rulers, local government, so that you can make noise about this, so that those who have not heard, there's still a lot of people who have not heard. But, well, I wish you the very best. Thank you so much, Mr.
Thank you for the advice and
for your time.
Thank you for having me.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
But that's it on the program tonight. Many thanks for watching, everyone. I'll see you next time. I'm sure Akimale. God bless Nigeria.